On a quiet Sunday morning in Los Angeles, the last thing anyone expected during a church service was Brad Pitt walking through the doors. The room froze, murmurs rippled, and all eyes turned to one of Hollywood's biggest stars, sitting humbly among the congregation. What followed wasn't just his presence, it was what he shared that left the entire church in stunned silence. Why would a man who has openly questioned religion choose this moment to step into the spotlight of faith? Brad Pitt's connection with religion is as layered and complex as the roles he's played on screen. Born in Springfield, Missouri, Pitt grew up in a conservative Southern Baptist household. Faith was a way of life, not just a Sunday obligation. His family was deeply rooted in church traditions, where prayers before meals and scripture lessons weren't optional, they were expected. For a young Brad, this environment was normal, comforting even. The Baptist teachings shaped his early worldview, offering a sense of structure and belonging in a tight-knit religious community. As he grew older, though, that foundation started to shift. Like many who step out into the world beyond their childhood, Pitt encountered new ideas, broader perspectives, and questions that his upbringing hadn't prepared him to answer. He began to feel confined by the rigidity of organized religion, the strict rules that didn't always align with the complexities of real life. In interviews, he's spoken about feeling disillusioned, as if the faith he grew up with didn't leave much room for personal growth or individuality. He's admitted that stepping away from religion wasn't easy. It was a gradual process filled with self-reflection and, admittedly, a lot of doubt. Pitt didn't abandon spirituality altogether. Instead, he embarked on what can only be described as a journey of exploration. Over the years, he's dabbled in various philosophies and belief systems, seeking answers in places that felt more flexible and inclusive than his Baptist roots. Buddhism, agnosticism, and even a kind of humanist spirituality have all been points of interest for him. He's openly talked about how fame and success, things that many equate with happiness, often left him feeling hollow. This existential emptiness spurred his search for something deeper, something meaningful. It was a quiet Sunday morning in Los Angeles, the kind where the city feels a little slower, a little more introspective. A prominent church known for its modern worship style and celebrity attendees was holding its regular service. The congregation had settled into their seats, the choir warming up, the stained glass windows casting colorful patterns across the room. It seemed like an ordinary day until Brad Pitt walked in. He didn't arrive with the entourage you might expect from a Hollywood star. No flashing cameras, no publicists whispering in his ear. Just Pitt, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, trying to go unnoticed. Of course, that was impossible. Murmurs spread like wildfire through the room as people realized who had just joined them. For many, it was a surreal moment, seeing one of the world's most famous faces in such an intimate, sacred space. Reactions varied. Some people were visibly stunned, stealing glances and whispering excitedly to the person next to them. Others tried to focus on the service, though their curiosity was evident in the way their eyes kept drifting toward him. A few skeptics couldn't help but wonder what he was doing there. Was this a genuine act of faith or some kind of publicity stunt? In a city like Los Angeles, where celebrity culture often blurs with spirituality, it was a fair question. When the pastor invited members of the congregation to share personal testimonies, no one could have anticipated what would happen next. Amid the usual murmurs of nervousness and anticipation, Brad Pitt stood up and walked to the front of the church. The room, already charged with excitement from his unexpected attendance, fell completely silent. Every eye was on him. It was a rare and vulnerable moment for a man whose life is typically hidden behind carefully constructed public appearances. Pitt began to speak, his voice steady, but carrying an emotional weight that immediately captured the room. He opened up about his childhood, recounting the strong religious foundation his parents had laid for him in Missouri. There was a deep respect in his tone as he described the role faith played in his early years. But he didn't shy away from addressing the doubts and questions that had eventually led him away from that path. He talked about his struggles with the strict doctrines of his youth and how they had left little room for questioning or personal growth. As he moved into adulthood, those doubts grew louder, and he eventually stepped away from organized religion altogether. What truly struck the congregation, though, was how he linked his spiritual journey to the emptiness he'd felt despite achieving unimaginable success. Pitt spoke candidly about the toll fame had taken on him, the way it often magnified feelings of isolation rather than filling the void. He admitted to years of chasing after things he thought would bring happiness, money, accolades, even relationships, only to find himself searching for something deeper. This wasn't a neat, polished story of redemption. It was messy, raw, and painfully human. Pitt described moments of grace, unexpected kindnesses, fleeting but profound connections that had reignited his curiosity about faith. He wasn't claiming to have all the answers, but he was honest about being on a journey to find them. Brad Pitt's testimony didn't end with the church service. It sparked a wildfire of reactions far beyond those stained glass walls. Within hours, news outlets picked up the story, each offering its take on what had happened. Headlines varied from celebratory to speculative. Some praised Pitt for his courage in opening up about such personal matters, framing the moment as a heartfelt display of vulnerability. Others questioned the timing, pointing out that Pitt had a new film slated for release, raising suspicions about whether the event was a strategic PR move. Social media exploded with opinions, as it always does. Fans flooded platforms like Twitter and Instagram with messages of support, applauding Pitt for his authenticity. For many, it was refreshing to see a celebrity speak so openly about doubts and struggles that most people could relate to. His story of searching for meaning in a world that often prioritizes material success resonated deeply. People shared their own experiences of faith and doubt, creating a ripple effect of introspection and dialogue. Of course, the skeptics were equally vocal. Some accused Pitt of using the church platform as a way to boost his public image. The idea of a Hollywood A-lister stepping into a sacred space to bare his soul didn't sit well with everyone. Critics argued that if his intentions were genuine, he wouldn't have done it in such a public setting. There were even whispers among conspiracy theorists about the church visit being a calculated stunt orchestrated by his PR team. For Brad Pitt, the church visit wasn't about making headlines or redefining his public image. It was deeply personal. In the days that followed, he spoke about the experience with a raw honesty that made it clear he wasn't interested in packaging this moment as a grand religious transformation. He described it as cathartic, a chance to release thoughts and feelings he'd kept bottled up for years. But he stopped short of calling it a conversion or a return to any particular faith. For Pitt, this wasn't about finding definitive answers. It was about acknowledging the questions that had always been there. He shared that stepping forward in such a public space wasn't planned or rehearsed. It just felt like the right thing to do at that moment. The weight of his words and the reactions they stirred had an emotional impact on him too. Pitt said the experience of speaking openly about his struggles and search for meaning felt like a kind of healing. It wasn't the kind of healing that erased the past or brought clarity to the future, but more like a quiet sense of relief, a release of emotional baggage he didn't realize he was still carrying. What stood out most was Pitt's insistence on personal exploration over public validation. He made it clear that his spiritual journey wasn't about meeting anyone else's expectations or fitting into a neat narrative. He's been vocal about resisting the labels that people try to place on him, whether it's as an actor, a father, or now a man searching for faith. This wasn't about finding religion or making a statement about spirituality in Hollywood. It was about taking a step, however small, in a direction that felt meaningful to him. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.